Now, meanwhile, in U.S. men's soccer, Gregg Berhalter seems like he's back. The 49-year-old was 4 years into the role when he admitted kicking his wife when they were teenagers. He was investigated by U.S. Soccer, which subsequently found it had no legal impediments to employing him. Berhalter will lead the side to the 2026 World Cup, co-hosted by the U.S. The allegation against him was made in December, with his original contract expiring at the end of that month. He released a statement co-signed by his wife Rosalind, sharing details of the 1992 incident, adding there was zero excuse for his actions. BJ Callahan then took over as interim coach and will remain in charge for Sunday's CONCACAF Nations League final in Las Vegas, and this year's CONCACAF Gold Cup tournament, which starts later this month. The mother of U.S. and Borussia Dortmund midfielder Giovanni Reina, a former college roommate and football teammate of Rosalind, said she reported Berhalter over the 1992 incident on 11th of December 2022. Berhalter had criticized Reina for not meeting expectations during last year's World Cup, and he did not start a match in Qatar. The former U.S. defender says there is work to do to rebuild his relationship with Reina. First of all, the incident regarding him kicking his wife, without condoning it, without making excuses for it, and we can be clear that violence against anyone, whether it's against a colleague, a man or woman, is unacceptable. And he has said as much. But it seems like this particular story was dredged up from way back when to prevent this man from being in charge of U.S. men's soccer team. I wonder, though, because he has said in the past that the whole Reina situation, the disagreement with the mother over starting the player, has been responsible for him, for this old story being dredged up. In fact, he claimed that he was being blackmailed. It seems to me like the U.S. Men's soccer might not have wanted to let Reina's mother win. That might have been a contributing factor to why they decided to keep Gregg Berhalter, because surely the world of football isn't short of capable coaches that could lead the men's national team.
Okay, so I think everything about the U.S. men's national team is just, I feel like U.S. men's national team is acting like a clubhouse now. Probably the return of Zidane to Real Madrid, the return of Lampard to Chelsea, the return of Ancelotti and the likes of it. A lot of U.S. fans will be bewildered, right? The manner at which the coach has to leave, and one or two interim coaches, now he's back. Let's not forget they also got the sporting director interim in the midst of it. And it's looking like the USSF, that's the Federation of U.S. Football, they really don't know how best to move forward. But on the flip side, Gregg Berhalter is a known face, is familiar with the team. After all, they brought them thus far to the semi-finals of the CONCACAF before the interim coach took them to the 4-0 win against Mexico. I'm sure it's one who will take over in the final as well. So, yeah, no biggie. But back to player management, man management, it's rift with Giovanni Reina. I mean, even Giovanni Reina's parents were brought into the whole brouhaha. Claudio and Danielle, his father and his mother, had to come in. Remember, there was news that broke out in the World Cup where the coach planned to send him home. But he had to now tell us at the press conference after the match that one thing, he didn't do that after the. So he has to set all those records straight, right? The U.S. men's national team don't need chaos. First of all, they need to win the final against rivals Canada. They need to prepare for the World Cup coming up on their own turf, right? So a lot of things are coming, and this is not the time to begin to feed the media with unpleasant stories.
Well,
This is the time where
there
British
was
and US need to come
as
together.
soon as the story came out and as soon as he was relieved of his position, there was always a conversation being had. He never went away in terms of considerations over who would take over on a permanent basis. Greg Berhalter was always within reach. There was always a consideration that he would return. In past situations where there's been accusations about domestic violence or harassment, the sporting institution usually cuts ties immediately and they never look back. At least not for years, if they ever do go back. But in this case, Greg Berhalter was always number one choice. There was a time when Thierry Henry was being considered. There were maybe one or two other names spoken of in lesser at a lesser tone, but Greg Berhalter was always, it seemed, their preferred choice to take back up the reins of the men's national team. And if that's the case, does this man, does he have so much political capital within the federation over there that he defies the odds in essence? Because first of all, there's also the consideration to the fact that he took this men's team to the quarterfinals of the World Cup. That is pretty impressive for the USA. And now, when they're about to host the tournament in 2026, they might have felt that the strongest candidate has to be American to lead the team. And the strongest candidate, who is an American, is Greg Berhalter.
And so first of all, I don't think they got to the quarterfinal of the World Cup. I think they
What?
were beaten in the round of 16
Are
by
we
Netherlands.
are we sure about that? Okay,
Yes,
round of
they were beaten in the
16.
round of 16 by Netherlands, 3-1.
Okay.
So first of all, they got the Helter's second return. I read an article on ESPN where they outlined that the second cycle syndrome hasn't been favorable for the USMNT, right? You can go back to the time of Bruce Arena, the time of Bob Bradley, the time of Jürgen Klinsmann. All these guys had two stints with the US team. But their second stint didn't favor them. It's just like when you listen to a one-time hit and there is a remix of the track, and the remix wasn't even an improvement to the track. So that's how it is. So second cycle syndrome hasn't really favored the US national team. But if the Berhalter is coming off to change that narrative or change that trend, all good and fine for him. He needs to start picking up points. Like I mentioned earlier, he finished the round of 16, lost to Netherlands. Netherlands weren't even that great at the World Cup. Let's not forget. They also lost the quarterfinal too. So the USMN team, you can't be winning to Malta. Pulisic is shining against Malta. Yes, they've tried to solve their number 9 issue by bringing in Folari Balogun, the Arsenal recruit who is on loan to start the range. Yes, they've tried to shock up the attacking line. Even the guy of Ghanaian descent, I've forgotten his name now, Reappointed. So a lot of ways they are trying to chop up their national team. And yes, it's good for them, but it's not just about what is on paper. They need to get results on the field of play.
All right. Greg Berhalter is back now. And what do you see going into the preparations that they're trying to achieve for the next World Cup? Famously, host nations tend to do extra well during such tournaments. I remember during the 2012 Olympics, Great Britain did very well during that particular Olympics compared to recent Olympics where it had been the US and China dominating by such a long distance. But the Great Britain did well in that tournament. Qatar, sure, they still are growing as a football nation. So no one really expected a lot from them in the last World Cup. Now, the previous World Cup in Africa, the 2010 one, South Africa did well. South Africa did well, and they've come a long way since then. And U.S. men's soccer is definitely trying to get on the same level, at the very least, as England when it comes to competing in world football. And the World Cup seems to be sometimes a catalyst for nations to go on and do better over the next few years before the next tournament. America, the USA have been doing well for a while now. They've been playing some good football. They've even been competing strongly against England in certain friendlies and even competitive matches. But now this is going to be in their backyard. What do you see going? What do you see happening for U.S. men's soccer?
So first of all, they need to win the final against Canada. I mean, that's a good way to start. According to FIFA rankings, they are still the top in North America and the Caribbean.
Of course.
I think above Mexico and is it Costa Rica also. I think Canada are fourth best. So yes, they are still top, but they should translate it to the global stage. First of all, beat Canada, establish your rank in America, then go into the global scene. I think he is a good coach. He has about 60-something winning percentage. He played over 60 games in the last 4 years, that is between 2018 and 2022, which is his first thing. And he won more games than he drew. He won over 30-something games, lost about 11 games. So he's a good coach, and he knows how to navigate this US MSC side. And like I mentioned earlier, he's beginning to get the players that can give him what he wants. Let's not forget he has defensive veterans like Tim Ring, who plays for Fulham, who we usually know his potential and his goodwill when it comes to defensive roles. So generally, he's doing well in terms of his squad is amassing. That's the first step. The second step is winning your games. He's doing that also in the CONCACAF. But when push comes to shove on the global scene, he shouldn't be maintaining group stage, leading, or round of 16. Or he needs to go further. He needs to get to the quarterfinal, the semi-final, and show good play. I mean, in the World Cup in 2022, they didn't really score a lot of goals, despite the fact that Pulisic, the captain, this young guy, I've forgotten his name, he was also instrumental for them, but they didn't really score goals. They only relied on drawing the likes of England and getting minimum points against other teams. So they need to improve on that. Thank God for Fulani in that rank. Thank God for where, and also Pulisic that is beginning to get his mojo.
Yeah.
I feel US will be fine.